In Chicago, you know that all sports rock. The Bears, Hawks, Bulls, Cubs, and Sox. Pick your favorite, you can choose. As long as the Packers lose. For everything you need to know, it's Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago. Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago.
Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago. This is your hosts, Alex and Sean. On this episode, we are going to be talking about the 10th straight Chicago Bears loss. Probably be talking about a little more, but I think we'll be pretty mad about that one. But first, I'd like to thank our sponsor, the Rockford Ice Hogs. If you're not familiar with the Rockford Ice Hogs, they're the AHL minor league affiliate of the Chicago Blackhawks. What does that mean for you? You could see the stars of tomorrow today at family-friendly, affordable prices. The season is going on right now, so head on over to icehawks.com, get yourself a hat, shirt, jersey, tickets, and more. Tell them Swerski Sports sent you. Alex, how are you doing today?
I am doing just fine. How are you?
Ah, I mean, I'd say I can't complain, but I'm going to be doing a lot of complaining here in a minute.
Yeah, I feel that. Hey, so as we get into this, I have three words that I would like to say. And you might have an idea of what those three words are.
Drop Dead George?
I was gonna say sell the team. It's gonna not
They're
be so
the same,
dark.
the same, they're the same church in there. It's the same ballpark we're at. Uh,
Sean, do you remember those chants ever happening at Soldier Field before? Because I don't.
no, no, never, ever, ever have I seen that at Soldier Field. And uh, and we've had some stinkers of teams, but this I think has been just the I don't want to say straw that broke the camel's back, but because it's a significant thing. It's not an insignificant thing, but this I think was just what pushed all of us over the edge. The fact that this has been thought that this would at least be a mediocre season.
Right. Right. And here we are with our second double-digit losing streak in 3 years.
Yeah. And here's the thing is Ryan Poles got rid of Matt Eberflus, which was justifiable. Nobody, I don't think anybody's doubting that.
No.
But now all of the focus is on Ryan Poles. There's nobody to deflect it, and he's trying to deflect it. You know, well, it starts in training camp. Yeah, you know what though? Is we are almost in January, and this is still a mess. If it hasn't been cleaned up by now, you are responsible. You are the one holding the bag. Your head coach that you hired was fired, and now you are left with the shitty roster that you put together and the bad offensive line that you have your hand-picked quarterback that can't play behind, and this is all on you. I think on this show we were very clear that Ryan Poles got a lot of benefit of the doubt, but the minute he picked his quarterback, that clock is starting, and
Mm-hmm.
and boy is the sands of time going fast for Ryan Poles.
Yeah, I'll say. And some of the things we gave him a pass for, we're not so sure. Now, you and I were concerned about the offensive line, as pretty much everyone around Bears Nation was going into this season, but we thought, you know what, if everything goes well, then maybe it won't be so bad. Well, guess what? It's pretty damn bad. And knowing that they went into this season where you didn't have room for injuries, well, guess what? You know what happens to football players? They get injured. So when you have fourth and fifth stringers out there who commit penalties that take away highlight reel touchdown throws, or you have linemen out there who are just kind of standing around as two guys just whiz by them on a regular basis. Um, you said you liked the depth so much. Well, what do you like about it? Because it's not good. It's not good at all. And there were moments in this past game where they were rushing just four, and yet it was like the cavalry was coming in on Caleb Williams. I don't understand what he saw with this depth. I really, really don't.
I get so frustrated though, is the narrative was with Justin Fields. He holds on to the ball too long. These sacks are his fault. And they've just carried that narrative with Caleb Williams. And yeah, sure, sometimes there are his fault. But you know
Yes.
what? The vast majority of them are on the offensive line. And uh and even Kyle Long uh made a tweet about that where there was a stat that showed that the vast majority of them are on the offensive line, and he just basically was just like, yeah, I mean, what are you going to say? It is, and this is an offensive lineman saying this, a former offensive lineman for this team. This this has been a catastrophe, and it's it's sure there's some of these sacks are on the quarterback,
Mm-hmm.
but they're on the system too. So when you take away the ones that are, oh, hey, okay, maybe this is not the offensive line, then those other ones, how many of those were on on the running back or the tight end for missing a block or the wide receiver for missing a block? How many of those are on them? Then you subtract those. How many of them are the bad scheme where nobody was open? They couldn't scheme anybody open. And it's a coverage sack. How many of those are, so you subtract those, how many of those are on somebody ran the wrong route? And now you have Caleb Williams going, oh shit. Um, and then how many of them are legitimately Caleb Williams? And how many of them were Caleb Williams where he made a spin move and made somebody miss and is running to try to make a play happen and get sacked? I want to subtract those because in in a year or two, we're going to be watching amazing things with Ben Johnson on those broken plays. So that's whatever after you subtract those, whatever you have left, those are the ones where you go, okay, those are Caleb's fault. And you chalk that up to he's a rookie playing on a bad offensive system. Like that's just what that is. He's a rookie playing in a bad offensive system where he's on his second head coach and third offensive coordinator of the season. So I don't want to hear that what's on Caleb because we cannot fairly judge anything about him because of how piss poor the Bears organization is run from the top down.
Yeah, and we can identify things that need to get better. I mean, that's part of watching, it's part of watching a rookie quarterback. I can tell you right now, the deep ball's got to be much better, much more accurate. And there are times he does hold on to the ball too long, and there are times he does need to just take a check down or get the ball away. But those are things you identify to grow on as a quarterback. Now, you look at this system as a whole, and here's what amazes me. This afternoon, I only saw I mean it was all the second half and the very end of the first half, but I got home from a function today and I watched a bit of the Packers Vikings game. And I'm watching the Vikings on offense. You watch Sam Darnold drop back. He's got protection. And all of these guys are just getting wide open. And then how many times do we watch the Bears and say, how the hell is nobody getting open? When you have legitimate guys on your team, when you have DJ Moore, who is now being used as a screen merchant, you have Keenan Allen, you have Roma Dunze, you have Cole Kmet. Where was he? Where was he? Where was he Thursday? Nobody gets open.
Yeah,
Where was Cole Kmet Thursday? Didn't he not get a single target?
I don't think he did. And that's how many times this season has it happened? It's not like it's one time and it was, oh, hey, maybe we can try to explain this away. No, it's not. It has happened multiple times, and it's to the point now where it's it's infuriating and it's willful stupidness.
Why is Gerald Everett getting targets?
I can't
Someone want
explain.
to explain that?
I
Is are they just using Shane Waldron's book and they just don't have anything else to do? Is it because Thomas Brown is not above? Which by the way, quickly, remember when we had our Matt Eberflus got fired show and you said you were worried about Thomas
Yep,
Brown being the head coach?
yep,
Well, and we wanted him to stay up in the booth and look down and focus on that.
yep,
Why couldn't you
yep.
just given it to Richard Hightower? I get maybe you wanted to see what he can do, but first of all, he's clearly not ready for this. And I'm not mad at it. Like, I have no ill will towards Thomas Brown. He was thrown into a fire. It's the guy was a passing game coordinator. I don't hold much against him, but you could have had him developing Caleb Williams as the OC and just let Richard Hightower, Eric Washington be the head coach. If you want Ben Johnson so bad, then why does it matter who the head coach is this year? But
Yeah,
I
yep.
don't ask me.
I mean, here's the thing: is if you at Thomas Brown and you said, all right, this is a guy that maybe we like, and maybe he's going to build this rapport. Caleb Williams is you leave him in the booth and let him do what he did for 2 games where you're like, okay, this is looking decent. And you let one of the more veteran coaches take the head coaching job, take the downfall because they're out. They're not coming back no matter what. But you know what? You have Thomas Brown under contract. Is is why can't you build him as a potential offensive coordinator for next year instead of trying to vet him out as a potential head coach? Is so I mean, you're trying to take a guy and jump him 2 levels above where he should be, or at least 1 level above where he should be, and 2 levels above where he was, and make him this head coach when that's just stupid. And that's what this team just continues to do is make stupid moves, make smart moves. Is if Ben Johnson or Mike Vrabel are the guys, okay, one has head coaching experience and the other one has been an offensive coordinator building his own system for 3 years, then you know what? Why can't you keep developing Thomas Brown as a potential offensive coordinator under one of these guys? Or at
Or at least
least,
part of your
you know,
staff.
yeah, I mean, you have him under contract. Be like, you know what? If he's not an offensive coordinator, we can leave him as the pass game coordinator and or maybe the quarterback's coach. And because of that rapport with Caleb Williams, um, where you're not coming in ground zero with him. And that should have been the move. But Ryan Poles is a dipshit. And I don't I want to jump forward here. You have Ryan Poles right now. And if you're Kevin Warren and Ding Dong George, I maybe you have other options, but I see 3 options with him. One, you don't extend him, and you just let him ride out his contract and stay there, but no extension. And then let him hire a head coach. 2, you extend him with the length of the new head coach. And 3, you fire him.
There's no way he's a
Now,
lame
I think he
duck,
has like
right?
that's not going to happen. Even no NFL franchise is going to let a lame duck GM hire their head coach, and no good head coach is going to come in there with a lame duck GM. That just seems stupid.
Here's what I see
And
happening. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
and what has he done to earn an extension? Even if you're in the camp where, you know what, he should be given another shot, what has he done to earn an extension?
See, and here's the thing. Here's the thing. At the end of last year, you could say, okay, you saw some improvement. You saw him kind of rebuild the defense. You got the first pick again. You're going to draft the quarterback he wants. He had leverage then. Now you're probably going to finish with only 4 wins and a 11 game losing streak. That should kill credibility right there. The fact that your so-called great defense, outside they did the job against the Seahawks, but Geno Smith didn't exactly look sharp either. But you look at the games before that, they got bowled over. But at this point, all I can all I can see now is two multiple double-digit losing streaks over the past 3 years. Guess what? If the Lions win their next game, this season, they will have equaled the win total for the Chicago Bears under Ryan Poles in 3 years. 3 years. 14 wins in 3 years.
Yeah, it is just unbelievable. And if you take away the trade with the Panthers, you look at what Ryan Poles has done, the record, the two super long losing streaks. It has not been a good track record.
No,
The free
and
agent signings, the
no.
trades, the draft picks, it has not been very good. I so even if you're somebody that's like, oh, he should be allowed to come back, is he does not earn deserve an extension, which leaves
Firing.
firing him.
Firing. Yeah. Now, here's what I'll say about Ryan Poles' track record, and here's what I'll say about what I think is going to happen. First, I'll say what I think of the track record. A lot of it to me with Ryan Poles has to do with what he didn't do, and that's build the offensive line and the defensive line. I think that there were individual moves that he did where I will still defend the Montez Sweat acquisition. I think he's playing hurt this year. You don't have enough pass rush, which is a whole other issue. And when you get schemed against, and he's getting good pressures, he's just not getting home. I'm I'm going to be one of the few people that's going to let that slide. I'll still call that a win. But you look at the process. His first two picks were Brisker and Gordon. I like Brisker. I really like Kyler Gordon. I think Kyler Gordon right now is one of the few guys on your defense who I'd look at and say, that's a keeper. That right there, that's a keeper. But here's the thing. The process. We didn't do it right. You look back and you realize you didn't do it right. You don't draft defensive backs. You build the trenches around everything. That's your foundation. That's your ground. You should be drafting line, and more line to start. You know who did that? The Lions.
The Lions.
Mm-hmm. And look where they're at. Trenches, the thing that you preached when you came here, when you got here, you said, we're going to beat you in the trenches. Okay, well, guess what? You're getting beaten in the trenches, and you're getting beaten in the trenches pretty damn bad. And you're going to go out there and say that Coleman Shelton's fine at center? You're going to be okay with that? You're going to be okay with your third-round pick as a project who is nowhere near ready, throwing him out there when everyone knew, he had no business being out there against the Vikings.
I'm fine. I'm fine if you take a third-round project pick, and if you are one of those teams that's competing for the Super Bowl every year.
He hasn't earned that, though. He hasn't earned the right to do that.
Because you're like, okay, well, we've got our offensive line. We've got our, most of our positions filled. We're drafting guys to when when we're hitting salary cap issues and we need to replace them. So you're drafting for a couple seasons. So like I'm fine with that because they're going to sit behind a real starter and they're going to learn and they're going to get stronger and but when you're drafting them knowing full well that they're likely going to be used at some point that season because your starters aren't very good, then yeah, that's a problem.
Yeah, and you know what? It opens my eyes too because so many of his draft picks, I looked at it positively. Okay, maybe Kieran Amagaji could be something. Oh, Jaquan Brisker, Kyler Gordon are good, and they are. But you realize more than ever how they did it was wrong and backwards because you see what every other team in the NFC North has. They have great coaches. They can win in the trenches. And you know what you do with those two things? You win football games. That's how you win. And you know what? You look at the Bears situation, and every week you watch any other team, you can say, why can't the Bears be like that? Why can't we just keep firing to wide open guys in the middle of the field? Why is it that we think the only way we can score is pitching and dumping off on screens or end rounds to the side of your line that's even more hurt than the other side? How many times do we have to say, oh, here, DeAndre Swift, why don't you run between the tackles even though that's not your strong suit and we can't open up a lane for you? How many times are we going to have to use DJ Moore, a guy who had a career year last year and was very, very good? Oh, hey, here's an end around, here's a screen. Why don't we make you a running back? It's
The
maddening.
Bears are the Bears are so stupid and dysfunctional that they're very likely going to be drafting either eighth or ninth. So it means there's 7 or 8 teams that have a worse record than them. And and we're talking about the Bears being the laughing stock. That's how bad and dysfunctional they are.
Yeah, and here's going to be the second point of what I was going to say too about Ryan Poles, and I want to get this out there. I think the Bears legitimately want Ben Johnson. I actually think they want him. And I think he wants the Bears. But you know what worries me?
Ding dong George.
Well, one, yes, Ding Dong George. That is true. Two, Bears ain't the only team out there looking for a new head coach. There might be a few more. And you know what? I'm praying to God that the Bengals make the playoffs. So we'll see what happens. Because what if that opened up and you're Ben Johnson, you had a chance to coach with Joe Burrow?
Um, that that would be pretty enticing.
And
Um,
not just them. Uh, I think Jared Mayo is probably gone from the Patriots, right?
I don't know. If they I don't think they're gonna I mean, they gave him 1 year and
But Robert Kraft doesn't like to lose.
he doesn't, but that team was absolutely as far as a roster, everybody knew that was garbage.
I know,
And
I know.
um I don't think they're I mean, anything's possible, especially when you have a crazy owner. Um
What if the
it's
Cowboys fire McCarthy?
I don't see Ben Johnson going there. That seems like because that's
Yeah,
a
maybe you're
weird
right.
situation.
Maybe you're right.
Jerry Jones is the owner slash GM. Um, do you want to have no say in
Good
your
point.
roster?
Good
I
point.
think that one's a tougher sell.
Good point.
Um, I think the interesting one is, are they going to fire the head coach in Miami?
Well, they have a chance to make the playoffs, so we'll see. Although, if they fire that coach, there's another candidate for the Bears where you could be enticed a bit. Just saying there. But if they fire Mike McDaniels, I do think that if they make the playoffs, his job is more likely safe. But
Um,
yeah, I don't know.
the,
I don't know.
the Jets job is open. I can't see Ben Johnson wanting that because that is a tire fire.
Yeah,
Uh,
because here's
like
the thing.
you don't have a quarterback. You have a dysfunctional house.
So do we, but at
That's
least
a
we have a cornerback.
we at least have a quarterback and a
Yeah.
lot of money to spend. They're going to be in cap trouble because they're going to have to cut Aaron Rodgers, and that's going to put them in a tight spot. Like so, I I can't see that one
Yeah.
being. I don't think the Patriots are are going anywhere. Um, man, Michael Penix is bad. Let's see. The Raiders job will probably be open, but are you going to try to go there
What's
with,
enticing there?
yeah, nothing there, and you got a crazy owner. Um, I don't think the Bengals job is going to be open, but there's a possibility. There's a possibility. Um,
Yeah,
the Browns job might be open, but I don't think anybody wants to touch that with a 10-foot pole.
because they still have Deshaun Watson. Jameis Winston wasn't a long-term solution unless they
The
they draft a
Jaguars
new
job,
QB. I don't know.
um, I mean, the Jaguars job could be enticing,
Mm-hmm.
but you look at you look at the Bears, and I think Caleb Williams is going to be better than their quarterback, and um, and the Bears have a lot of free agency money to spend, and Chicago is an infinitely better city than Jacksonville. That's got to go for something, um,
Except the weather.
except the weather. Let's see. The Giants job will likely be open, but that's another abysmal situation because the reports are that they probably will not be firing their GM, but maybe firing their coach. Their GM is bad. He decided to double down and go, I'm going to pick Daniel Jones over Saquon Barkley.
Yeah,
Um,
that's. I mean, neither New York football team is in the greatest shape right now.
um, I don't think anybody in the NFC West is getting fired. Um, so that leaves the Saints. And again, there you don't have a quarterback.
Boy, you don't buy
So
Rattler.
no, no. So I mean,
Mm-hmm.
honestly, unless the Bengals job becomes open, uh, I Ben Johnson is either going to stay in Detroit or come to Chicago. I don't see any other situation.
I just there's a few out there that I might worry about, but at the end, I do believe like Kevin Warren and the organization does want Ben Johnson. Um, but like you said, there's the McCaskies, and I read somewhere today how they're like, oh, they want someone who embodies Chicago. What does that even mean? Can this
They
team
don't.
just
They,
not be corny and stupid?
if they wanted somebody truly like that, they would have gotten Jim Harbaugh.
Yeah, right. It's
Is
fu- yeah.
lunch pail football.
Yeah, but the thing is, they want someone who embodies Chicago that doesn't scare their little peepees and wee wees.
I mean, the thing with Jim Harbaugh is you know what you're going to get. He's going to be abrasive to the front office and ownership. He's not going to have exciting brand of football. He's going to go to Costco and when he needs pants, and he's gonna I like these pants, and buy 10 pairs of them, the same 10 pairs. And then he's just gonna go out there and win in the trenches and win ugly football games. That's what he's gonna do. And he's gonna say some weird shit, and people are gonna be like, yeah, we're winning games, and then secretly whisper, is there something wrong with him? Like seriously, like mentally? But he wins football games.
Mm-hmm.
And that was not important enough for the Bears to even consider him.
Yeah. Well, the nice thing about Ben Johnson is he doesn't seem, quote, scary. I can't believe we have to say that. But
Why I don't believe that it'll be Vrabel is because he seems scary to the ownership.
good. Let him scare him. Scare him away.
Now, like I'm not going to shit all over Mike Vrabel, because if Mike Vrabel came, this team would be a a team with a winning record. I guarantee that. They all these things where they're not disciplined and they're make stupid mistakes, not going to happen. It's all done. That's all ending, and he's going to have everybody playing hard, playing smart. But I think has a ceiling, and
Right.
the fact that he's not an offensive guy scares the shit out of me, because if he brings in somebody that's good, they could be a one and done. And I know we've worried about that the last couple of years. Like, oh, maybe Luke Getz will be a one and done. Maybe Shane Waldron will be one and done. But I think uh if you look at Vrabel, he's got a history of guys going. So um it's it is one of those things you do worry about a little bit. And what's going to happen when he loses his guy is you're going to take a step backwards. And that's exactly what happened in Tennessee. But it'll be a huge step up from the nonsense mess that they're in right now.
I mean,
But I think
it's that's a pretty low
Ben
bar to
Johnson is the
raise.
right choice. It
Yeah.
is a low bar, but this is the Bears. We set the bar extraordinarily low on a consistent basis.
We talk about how we need leaders of men and people who will command the locker room. You hire the right coach, that stuff would just come with it. We're looking for the bare minimum because we don't get the bare minimum. Honestly, the only bare minimum we really got was Matt Nagy. And Matt Nagy wasn't good enough, but at least they were, I mean, they won a division. They went to the playoffs another time. Wasn't nearly good enough. He wasn't the right coach, but the bare minimum at least was semi respectable over 4 years compared to now where you are bottom of the barrel. Not only in
Yeah,
football, but in sports, in all of sports, you are one of the worst, if not the worst organizations in North America. And the whole country got to see that on Thursday night. The biggest waste of 3 hours anyone would ever have.
I am so glad I did not watch that game live.
It
I went to
was
see
awful.
Nosferatu, and I missed the first half. And um, Nosferatu was less scary than watching the Bears.
And I heard Nosferatu's
And
pretty intense.
it is. It's real good. Um, and I came and I was like, oh, it's a close game. And then I went home and I watched the rest of the game, and I was like, oh, Jesus Christ, this is dog shit tacos. But I the bar with this team is just low. And in order to turn things around, they need what they need to do is to take big swings with high ceilings. They did that with Caleb Williams, And I think Caleb Williams is going to pan out. Sure, he's not. I don't know why people thought he was going to be the savior that just came in and changed everything. He's a rookie. Even CJ Stroud, who's looked great last year and one of the best rookie quarterback seasons ever, he's taken a step back this year. He doesn't look
Yeah, there's
terrible,
been
but he
some
doesn't look.
struggles there.
There's been struggles. He's not nearly as good, and um, so you're going to see improvement from him. And Caleb Williams, you're seeing some good things with a dysfunctional team. He's
Yeah.
he's doing good things despite the Bears. And so you took a big swing with him. Very high upside. Why on earth wouldn't you can keep that momentum and go with Ben Johnson? Is I always say is if you take a big swing, it better be the smart swing. You took a big swing with Mark Trestman, and that was a bad swing, but it was a big one.
It was a it
It
was
was
a
just a
big
bad one.
swing. It was a very, very high risk swing.
Yeah, it was Javi Baez's rookie year swinging at a high fastball.
Yeah, right.
High fastball out of the zone.
Yeah.
But it's going with Ben Johnson is a big swing with a really high upside potential.
Right. Right. Because tell me, here's 2 points to that to back you up on that. Number one, what was one of the big problems with hiring Tressman? Do you know what I'm thinking about?
Um, he was coming from Canadian football.
That too. But you remember who wanted the job?
Yeah, a real head coach,
Bru Bruce Arians.
Bruce
Bruce
Arians.
freaking Arians. So it, hiring Ben Johnson, you're not passing up on a Bruce Arians right now, right? There is no Bruce Arians
Yeah,
out there. Number two, Ben Johnson has a lot more of a rapport and a much better reputation. This kind of goes off of your point than Mark Trestman did, right? Like who was more hyped up going into this? Were people talking about Mark Trestman the way that people are talking about Ben Johnson? I don't think it's even
no.
close.
Ben Johnson is the name in this coaching cycle. Like,
Yes.
especially, I mean, I think Belichick, from his history, uh, you know, it have been, but he is now with University of North Carolina.
And that's such a Bill Belichick is such an outlier. That's such a unique situation. People can look at him being the most successful head coach of all time and also realize that he was probably past that point in this league of doing that job, right?
Right. And I think people were looking at it as if you make him the head coach and don't give him the GM title, where he was like, I don't think he was a bad head coach, even at the end. I think he was such a bad GM that he couldn't overcome Bill Belichick, the coach, couldn't overcome Bill Belichick, the GM,
Right. Well, he couldn't
without Tom
overcome
Brady.
once Tom Brady was gone.
Yeah. Um, so I mean, could he, if he just said, listen, I'm going to just be the head coach, you be the GM, and could he have been successful? Possibly, but I don't think that was the right move. And so I'm glad UNC just took that problem and took it away.
Right.
But outside of that now is who is the other name? Like who else is there? Sure, there's like a few guys. Um there's the offensive coordinator for Tampa Bay. There's the offensive coordinator for the Bills.
Joe Brady.
Uh,
Yeah.
there's Mike Vrabel. Like there's no like just super hot names besides Ben Johnson.
Right, exactly. I mean, I was even saying earlier with people, the pickings are slim. in terms of the coaches you hire. The pool just isn't as vast as we've seen in years past. Because even when the Bears hired Matt Eberflus, you had a number of guys out there. Did you have a guy whose ceiling was massive necessarily? Well, guess what? Kevin O'Connell ended up being one of those guys, but was he as hyped as Ben Johnson? I don't think so.
No.
But you had like reputable guys in that mix. You had Dan Quinn, you had Jim Caldwell, there were a few Cliff Kingsbury. You had a number of guys in that mix, but there was more of a pick to it. Where this, I mean, everyone's talking about Ben Johnson, and I think that when you look at the situation, you are looking at a high risk, high reward because you're not bringing in somebody experienced, but the ceiling of experience out there isn't very high in this either. Mike Vrabel's the biggest guy out there, and there's a few other guys, obviously, that are hanging around, like Brian Flores could have a chance to coach again, be a head coach. I think that's probably one of the other bigger names in terms of experience. But yeah, it's not very big.
Yeah, and listen, I recognize that taking a swing uh on O'Connell and LaFleur, um, those were big swings because they were offensive guys who were hot names at the time, but didn't have huge track records. You look at
Right.
Ben Johnson, and Bears fans are like nitpicking that. I don't think that's the same because he's got multiple years of experience as that offensive coordinator in Detroit. And he's not a disciple of somebody else. Like this is his own system. Like he's the guy.
Right.
Uh and that's like with Matt Nagy, you took that swing and you were like, oh well, he was the offensive coordinator under Randy Reid. And then you realize looking with hindsight as 2020, you go, all right, well, Andy Reid is really the offensive coordinator. This is a guy that just picked plays out of the Andy Reid playbook to call. Um,
And even so, the Matt Nagy hire is a hire I can't be mad at. I can look at Mark Trestman, I can look at Ernie Accorsi telling George to hire John Fox, I can look at hiring Matt Eberflus and point that all out. At least with the Matt Nagy hire, I could say it was a swing, there was logic behind it, it just didn't work.
yeah, I will agree with that. And with Ben Johnson, I can't guarantee it's going to work out.
No,
I
no one
can't.
can.
But you know what? Is there everything points to it being successful. He's the consensus number one guy from everybody. And you know what is just being consensus number one doesn't make it right, but it makes it easier because people aren't going to clown you for doing it if it doesn't go right.
Right,
Well,
exactly.
that's what everybody else would have done too. Um, but he's the consensus guy. He's got a multiple year track record. And I will always point this out is Sean McVay is probably, I think most people would say, like the best offensive mind in football. I think that's not an inaccurate thing, right?
I would say top three. I mean, I would put Andy Reid first, but Sean McVay's right
Okay.
there.
Okay, but I mean, no one would have a problem if you argued that. It's not out of
Oh
the
no,
he's right there.
it's
Um
not mind blowing like saying what
yeah,
him. No, it's there is yes, you are correct.
he got rid of Goff because he didn't think he could win with Jared Goff. And Ben Johnson took Jared Goff willingly and was like, I'm going to win with this guy. And he
Hmm.
has.
Yeah,
And I know
yeah,
it's not this crazy thing because Jared Goff was the number one overall pick, but it was a guy that was a reclamation project. And he converted him from a guy that they were winning in spite of to a guy that they're winning because of.
right, exactly. I mean, you look at what he did in LA, and he wasn't bad in LA. He wasn't, but you weren't looking at Jared Goff saying, wow, this guy is single-handedly or the X factor. You know, people talked about Todd Gurley. People talked about Aaron Donald. People talked about their defense a lot. And it was kind of a defensive battle when they got to the Super Bowl back in 2018. But now you have the fans of Detroit chanting Jared Goff's name. It's a completely different dynamic than it was in LA.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, so I look at all these things. I was like, well, this guy is going to be able to do magical things with Caleb Williams, and um, and I'm excited about that, and I think it's the right choice. It's a big swing, but the safest swing too, I believe.
Yeah, yeah, I definitely agree there. And I'm gonna say this, and I think every Bears fan would agree. You have to be willing to do whatever it takes to get him, no matter how much it costs, no matter what you have to do. Kevin Warren needs to realize you can't come away with this empty-handed because this franchise cannot afford to get this wrong. And here's what I could see happening is that Warren and Poles are going to hire Kevin Warren, or they're going to hire Ben Johnson, and they're going to tie Ryan Poles to Ben Johnson. That's what I see happening. Now, what if Ben Johnson would come here, but not with Ryan Poles here? I think that's easy. Then you move on. Because guess what? He's a lame duck anyway.
Here's the thing: if you're the Bears and you are truly, because what they're saying publicly is that they're behind Ryan Poles, and I think the terms were we're confident he's a smart young mind, blah blah blah. Um, but if Ben Johnson comes in here is like, no, I need my own guy, um, and you're willing to then get rid of Ryan Poles, then how much confidence did you really have in him? And so like if what Ben Johnson has to say influences your willingness to keep him, you should just get rid of him anyway.
I mean,
If
I agree, but
if
this is the Bears we're
if
talking about.
if you are so like so cemented in your support of him, no offensive or no potential head coach should be able to sway you from your offensive coordinator, or I mean from your GM. So um but if Ben Johnson's able to do it, then you really weren't that firm in your support of him anyway, and he should probably be gone.
No, I agree. But like I said, who are we talking about here? We're
Oh, it's
talking
the
about the
Bears.
Bears. Do they ever have good reasoning for anything?
No, they will just do something dumb. It's what
Right.
they do.
You know what would be so Bears at the 11 o'clock hour, they have everything pretty much ready from what they want to hear from Ben Johnson, and then right at the end he says something they don't like, and they say, "Nope, we're not doing it." Says he says something that makes Georgie Porgy shake in his boots. Wouldn't that be so Bears?
I mean, be Super Bears.
Oh, he said he doesn't like construction cranes in the sky.
He says he puts ketchup on his hot dogs. That's not Chicago.
Well, I think I'm gonna make this team pretty damn good. What did you just say? What did you just say? Mother, look what he just said. Mother. It's like Millhouse. Mom, it's swearing.
Uh,
I hate this team. I
but
really
it's
do.
like so this team has just we've known this team to be bad, but this is like a next level bad. Like you brought this point up before, the sell the team chance. And George is a dum dum, but George at least like he somewhat has his like finger on the pulse.
He knows the fans are unhappy.
But now he knows like the fans are unhappy, all of the former players are unhappy. The the national media is making a complete just joke of them. Like he knows this. I just don't think he knows what to do about it.
Right, exactly. Does his family care? That's my question. I mean, George is the chairman. He's the one that sits in the stands and rides around the scooter and buys Michelob Ultras at the beer stands. So he's with the fans. His 102-year-old mother is, in the skybox, and you don't really see much of the rest of the McCaskies or, those people or Pat Ryan, who I'll get to Pat Ryan in a minute, but um, what's their incentive? As I've asked before, I don't know because we don't hear from them. I don't think George is smart enough to fix it, but to your point, I do think he is aware of what's going on. Like he knows people are pissed off. Isn't did Wasn't there a video a few weeks ago where fans were talking to him in like the parking lot or the tailgate or something, and you saw him nod kind of with a sad face. I know, I know. Did you see that?
Yeah. And from what I understand is he has his security people that go in advance to the people they're going to talk to and give them a spiel about keeping it civil and don't don't go over the top with whatever you have to say.
Sends his ghouls.
He sends his flying monkeys.
Fly, fly. Oh, oh,
Uh,
sir, monkeys can't actually fly,
but
right?
then what have I been sending them to? Their certain death. But you know, when you have like former players that are part of the media and they just don't know what to say anymore.
right.
Like Olin Kreutz, quote, I have no idea what they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
Tom Waddle, in the name of the good Lord, what am I supposed to say?
Nobody knows what to say anymore. Nobody. It's incredible.
And Patrick Manley said, I want to get back to analyzing football, not analyzing press conferences.
Mm-hmm. Good old Patrick Manelli.
Uh, so now we're back to watching uh, Tankathon and seeing where we're going to be drafting. And
Yeah, like we do every year.
right now, yeah, and it's just sad. And if you look at it right now, if the season were to end today, which we know there's one more, the it would be the number 9 pick. Bears would have number 9. But mathematically, if you look at it, they've got a 27% chance of getting the 7th overall pick, 39% chance of getting the 8th overall pick, and a 19% chance of the 9th pick. So it looks like they have the best odds to get the 8th, and they have a 2/3, 66% chance of getting either 7 or 8. So again, how many years in a row is this team picking in the top 10?
Too many. Too many. How many years in a row are we playing for nothing in November and December? It's been pretty much every year outside 2 years the past decade. And we're talking about high draft
And
picks for a guy we don't really trust to draft.
and right. And just think, Ryan Poles spent a lot of money on DeAndre Swift. And I said at the
Yes,
time,
he did.
it's too much money to spend on him. But if you use him correctly, like I think he could be a weapon. And they have not used him correctly. But do you know who they could have had?
Saquon Barkley.
Saquon Barkley, who has a very good shot next week if they let him play, of breaking the all-time single season rushing mark. He already has over 2,000 rushing yards this season. I'm sure he wouldn't have done that with the Bears, but Saquon Barkley is so much better than DeAndre Swift. And if you had Caleb Williams and Saquon Barkley, Ben Johnson would be salivating.
Well, and the thing is, we talk about the issues with Caleb Williams. One issue we have is you can't establish a run because you're not good enough at it. That makes it harder on a rookie quarterback's job. You don't have the
Yep.
personnel to establish a run because you don't, like I said, with DeAndre Swift, if you had the right system and the right blocking ability, he can be a weapon, but the Bears just don't. It's not all DeAndre Swift's fault.
Yeah, it's just this is a bad offensive line, and they don't open up holes.
Yeah. It's frustrating because how many times have we seen them try to like even power run with Roshan Johnson, who's pretty good uh, at the goal line, but we've seen instances where he gets stuffed if they're like at a 4th and 3 or a 4th and 2 or a 4th and 1 and they're trying to power run and they can't.
Hmm. I have a question for you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so looking at the offensive line for next year,
Mm-hmm.
we have one position that's solidified, right? Right tackle.
Right.
Would you say that's the only? Okay.
It's the only one I feel somewhat comfortable with.
Now, Tevin Jenkins. Tevin Jenkins is an unrestricted free agent, correct?
Yes.
So Tevin Jenkins has not had a good year, and he's been injured. He's not going to get his big payday.
Right.
If you're Tevin Jenkins and you're the Bears, are you willing to do a 1-year deal and put him back on the right side where he had been playing and he was playing well? You put him on the right side next to Darnell Wright, and then you look to build from the center left. Are you willing to do that?
Yeah, I'd be tempted to because here's the thing. Tevin Jenkins is risky with all the injuries. He's been injured virtually every year. But there's that part of you that says the Bears are going to let him go. Someone else is going to pick him up, and he's going to be a Pro Bowler. Now, if they let him go,
I
I wouldn't be as upset. Let's just say that.
if they let him go, I'm not going to be terribly upset. I just don't want them to sign him to a long-term deal or a lucrative deal. But
Agreed.
if they were to sign him and say, hey, listen, we think you can play. We know you're not going out there and getting this free agent deal that you're expecting. Sign a 1-year deal, a prove-it deal. We move you back to the right side. And there's nothing stopping you from drafting potential replacements. It's just you don't have to put it as your high priorities. So you could say, all right, well, maybe go first round, a left tackle, and then second round, a left guard, or you go probably left guard and free agency. You probably don't want to have your left guard and your left tackle both be rookies. So maybe you go rookie center. So you get the best center in the draft, you get the best left tackle in the draft, sign a free agent left guard, and then you still have another high second round pick, a top 10 second round pick, and you could do whatever you want with that. I think that gives you more flexibility, and where you could draft a a guy that you could develop.
Sure.
Because I think the goal would be you're probably not signing Tevin Jenkins long term either way. It's giving him the opportunity to earn his money elsewhere and giving you another year of because it's replacing 4 offensive linemen is tough.
Yeah, absolutely.
So if you could get him back on a 1-year deal, move him to the right side where he was better with a better offensive system, I think that eases your job of fixing the whole offensive line. It gives you more flexibility that way. That's my thinking.
Yeah, I don't think that's a bad idea. I don't think that's a bad idea at all. Because, like you said, it's hard to rebuild an entire offensive line in one offseason. Can you make it a hell lot better? Sure, but completely rebuilding it, that's tough. Because you gotta, if you're gonna be drafting a lot
Yeah.
of these guys, you gotta hit on all of them.
Oh yeah. And even if you draft a left tackle, say you get the best left tackle in the draft, which I at number 7 or 8, maybe you do, but probably you don't. You probably get the second choice, maybe even the third choice. Depends on how this plays out. Um, but that doesn't mean that they're necessarily going to be a guy that's a Pro Bowler. Then it just they're gonna have rookie troubles as well.
Yeah, for
Um,
sure.
so you would think that you'd think you'd want to put a veteran out there to to help out, so you don't have 2 rookies out there. Um, and then uh, gives you a lot more flexibility there.
Yep, for sure.
But I mean, you know, I would like to see them bring in another running back. Nothing against DeAndre Swift, but if Roshan Johnson isn't the guy, then you need that 1-2 punch
Yeah,
for
you really do.
uh that's what Ben Johnson has been really good at. And it would be nice to have a power back in there. I mean, honestly, I would love to get the guy from um, Boise State, but
Oh, I know who you're talking about. Yeah.
the Bears aren't going to be able to draft.
No.
Uh, he's too high to draft him in top 10, and he won't be there by the time you draft in the second round.
Right, right.
Uh, but yeah, it was an ugly game against Seattle. You couldn't get anything going offensively.
You don't even want to
Um,
break it down. It's so bad. I mean, the way the clock was managed at the end, when you heard the fans booing, they got all 3 timeouts. They're burning all this time. Then they have to take a timeout because they're going to have a delay a game, and the fans boo louder. You saw Caleb Williams make 2 heroic throws on that drive. That one to DJ Moore was incredible on 4th down. That was one of the best throws he's made all season. And then you were eventually just forcing him to arm punt at the end of the game, and that ended the interception streak, and it felt like a fitting way to end it.
you know, the one thing I do have to say about this is I think a lot of other people have said it too, is what would that have kick have been at the end of the game? 57 yards?
Yes.
If you're not willing to go, like you are going to go and throw 4th and 10 when you haven't scored a touchdown all game long. I mean, it's one thing if it's like, oh yeah, you've just been scoring at will and it's a shootout, and you feel confident in there. That you have nothing that shows confidence in marching down the field and getting it on 4th and 10. You decided to go for it on 4th and 10 rather than kick a 57-yard field goal with a high price kicker. If you are not willing to attempt a 57-yard kick to tie the game up at the end of the game with your kicker, you don't feel that confidence, then you need a new kicker.
I say this as someone who loves Cairo Santos, but yeah, I mean, here's the thing. It's not like 57 yarders are the easiest, but you know what? They're not the holy crap they once were. I
Yep.
mean, there was a point, I mean, like 57 yarders now are like what 49 yarders were a few years ago, where it's like, okay, it's long, it's not guaranteed, but it's very makeable. And it was rainy, but it wasn't windy. So, yeah, and we know Cairo Santos, for as accurate as he is, does not have the strongest leg. And I would have taken my chances. 57 yards, he either makes it or he doesn't. But having an arm punt when you were getting double rushed, yeah, I would have taken my chances with the field goal.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Um, and he's making almost $4.5 million. Uh,
It's a lot of money for a kicker.
so if you were to move on from his contract and move on from Gerald Everett, move on from Ryan Bates, move on from DeMarcus Walker, do any of those names go, man, we can't live without those guys?
No.
Um, you move you move on from those guys, too much cap space you have? $100 million.
And
$100 million.
and the cap space has been something that Ryan Poles we've been flexing about with him, but you know what? Eventually you got to use it.
Yes, but here's the thing. If you are to go move on from Ryan Poles, you bring in a new GM with Ben Johnson. Now you have a top 10 pick, $100 million, a, your future quarterback going into a second year, and a good wide receiver core. You're like, okay, I feel like I can work with, and you've got key pieces on defense. Sure, there's a lot of pieces that are missing, but you have the ammunition to make this a big turnaround. It's there for if Ding Dong George gets out of the way and lets the right people do the job.
Right.
Ugh,
Yeah.
I'm just so
Yeah.
frustrated with this team.
Yep. It's they it's soul cutting at this point. Like we just feel dead.
Kind of, yeah. I just want this season to be over because it's exhausting and embarrassing.
It is. We are the biggest joke in the NFL. There are teams that are technically worse, but nobody's laughing at any other team
Yeah, I mean the
more
Jets,
than
we've
us.
already had our laughs. We've already had our laughs at the Jets, and now they're just kind of the jokes have all run out. Um,
It's the same
but
recycled Aaron Rodgers jokes. We all know. It's.
yeah, the jokes have all run their course. Now we've got the Bears jokes are just they're the front and center ones.
Yep. Yep. And I think this is the worst I've ever felt as a Bears fan. I'm going to feel as worse as I felt as a Bears fan, even though Caleb Williams is statistically going to have one of the very best seasons a Bears QB ever had. And this is how we feel. Is we can't escape the dysfunction. And every passing regime, it was supposed to be over, and yet it still remains. And even here we are with a team that had promise, a team that looked like it had built something, a team that had the highest ceiling quarterback that they ever had, and you're still bottom of the barrel. This has truly ripped out Bears fans' hearts. And you're at the point where the Bears are no longer just a middling bad team. They are the center stage of sports dysfunction. The broadcasters even say it on the broadcast. What do they call them? A circle of dysfunction?
Yep.
Harsh but true words.
I mean, when you have commentators saying Caleb Williams should force his way out of Chicago, like you have to take notice of that.
Yeah. Yep. They don't just say that to say that.
Yeah, it's just an abomination. It is so embarrassing, and hopefully George, hopefully George takes it all in, knowing that all these jokes are ultimately at his expense.
Yep. I saw
And
somebody
if
tweet that they were at the game among all the sell the teams chants. He looks over and right there, George McCaskey was just standing there. He was right in the middle of it.
good, let him hear it.
Yep.
Let him hear it.
I was very proud of the crowd because I've been wanting a sell the team chant for years, and it might not make a difference ultimately, but booing, you can boo all you want. We've been booing all these years, but when you audibly say, we want your ownership gone, I just think that speaks more volumes. Like I said, it might not make a difference, but it sends a clearer message, I think. One that
You
needs to
know,
be heard.
I know the Bears have had a couple of decent teams in your lifetime, but
Not many.
I don't think you're aware of I don't think you're aware of just how much Chicago loves the Chicago Bears when they're winners.
Yeah. I
I
got
mean,
one taste of it in 2006. It's about it.
and that wasn't even like a dominant team. That was a team that kind of got lucky here and there, and they were a good team
Perfect
that got
storm.
lucky here and there.
Yep.
But you've seen how much this town embraced the Blackhawks when they were good. You saw how much they embraced the Cubs when they were good.
Oh, yeah.
Um, and the Bears are the crown jewel of Chicago sports. So just imagine when they're a dominant team, what this town goes through. 19 the mid 1980s, just everything, was Chicago, and the fans were just so awesome, and it was such a good time, and I want to relive that again before I die.
I just want to live it more than one quick flash.
Yeah, it'd be nice to have, a several like 5-10 year run where you are competing for the championship.
Yep.
Uh, all right, should we move on to another topic here?
Yeah, so you did the show solo yesterday. I wanted to talk about this to you, especially when it was made official today. I wanted to talk
Go
about the
for it.
Sammy Sosa stuff a little bit.
You know, am I glad Sammy's back? Yes. But I don't know about you. The whole, dual press conference thing, it was embarrassing. It was just childish and embarrassing, to be honest with you.
You're talking about the divorce?
No, I'm talking about like the two when they announced the, Sammy's fake
Oh,
apology
oh,
and
oh,
the
oh.
Cubs respond. Like it was embarrassing.
It felt
I
pre-planned.
I don't know. It was definitely pre-planned, but it just felt just childish. Like, why did it have to be like this? And why were the Ricketts holding his, so strongly to him needing to apologize? Like, he didn't do anything to them. He he did steroids under a different ownership group.
Right. Well, that's what we've been scratching our heads about for a decade plus now is look, okay, you understood that the likes of Jim Hendry and Andy McPhail and Sam Zell, the Tribune ownership, when they divorced from Sammy Sosa, they were the ones there. And you also realized too, some of the media. There are media members out there who will never really forgive Sammy Sosa because they just didn't like him. And there are probably some teammates out there that will probably never really be happy with it. Hint, hint, Kerry Wood. But like you said, the Ricketts weren't the owners. They weren't even partial owners. They were fans in the bleachers and part of a completely different industry, TD Ameritrade. That's how they got their money. So there was no one-on-one connection with Sammy Sosa when he was a player here. And I even wrote about this too. I wrote about this for Cubby's Crib last week, how when Sammy Sosa returns to Wrigley Field, you're returning to it's the same ballpark, but it's not. He's coming back to a franchise that's the same franchise, but it's not. You're going to come into a facility that's been completely gutted and redone and modern. He's no longer going to be looking at a clubhouse that's a broom closet and a crumbling grandstand and a day with no cell phones or smartphones, I should say, video boards. There's no Andy McPhail, there's no Jim Hendry, there's no Dusty Baker. There's none of that. It is completely turned over, a completely different organization, even if it's the same name, it's the same franchise. So this is going to be interesting just to see the dynamic of the relationship between these two entities because it's so different. Now, here's what I want to know. What do some of the former players think? And I don't think they have a right to dictate necessarily, but just out of sheer curiosity, like, are there still hard feelings between him and a guy like Kerry Wood? Because I still think he's the one that smashed his boombox. Um, I know it's not like the whole '04 team is going to be at Cubs convention, but Carlos Zambrano's probably going to be there. Kerry Wood's probably going to be there. I mean, those are the big two I could think of. I don't know if Mark Pryor would be there, but you have a few of the guys there, and that was a really sour ending. That was one of my first experiences of the downfall of a Chicago superstar in my life was that whole Sammy Sosa fallout. And let's be real, nobody's going to agree fully. The fan base, there are fans out there that are disgusted by this, but a lot of them are happy about it. Now, the vibe I get, and tell me if you disagree, regardless of how you feel, here's the vibe I've gotten. The people who are happy understand and will allow the people that are unhappy to be unhappy. And the people who are unhappy understand and allow the people who are happy to be happy. That's the vibe I get.
I would agree with that.
Yeah.
And I'm a little bit indifferent.
Mm-hmm.
I lived through the whole Sammy Sosa era, and um, I recognize how important what he did was to baseball and to the Cubs. But also what a slap in the face it was to baseball. And I'm a staunch believer in don't let the steroid people in the hall. But at the same time, to not acknowledge who they were and what they did for the team, like I, I'm glad he's back. And for those that are gonna be mad forever. I'm not mad at it. And for the people that aren't that upset by him, you know, did, and they're just happy to have him back now. Like I, I'm not good for them. Like I'm, I'm just glad that the drama is over and we're all moving on. It's 20,
Yeah, I
almost
mean,
2025.
yeah, it's 2 decades.
Yep.
Like it's crazy to think about 2 decades. And I'm kind of with you because here's the thing. Sammy Sosa was the first superstar I watched as a kid in Chicago because Michael Jordan was gone by the time I was old enough to really follow everything. And Sammy Sosa was the name in the city. And he resurrected a very boring Cubs franchise and helped resurrect baseball that was on the brink of failure after the strike. Like we understand the historic ramifications of that. On the flip side, from what I remember of the Sammy Sosa era in detail was the bitter end. I remember the corked bat. I remember the divorce in '04. I wasn't old enough in 1998 to realize what was going on with the home run race. Even in years like 99 and '01 when he hit 60 plus home runs, I was pretty young to really appreciate what it was. I was really starting to understand everything towards '03, '04 when things started to go south. And I know he was an awful teammate. Whether he intended to be or not, he was a bad teammate. And everyone knows it. Everyone knows it. So, like you said, I'm relieved the whole drama is over. I'm glad we don't have to hear and talk about it anymore. They could just come back. People can chant Sammy. People can have a good time. And then the drama can be behind them.
Yep. Um, so, but the way that it happened, it seemed embarrassing. And then you had some media members who should know better, where like, um, he benefited ownership. Like, no, this is a different ownership. Like, this is a different ownership group. Like, I don't know. The whole thing has just been just weird. And but I will say that it does make me kind of want to go to Cubs convention.
Yeah, I know. I know. I feel that. But one thing's for sure. I don't see the ads for Cubs convention like I saw before Sammy Sosa, came public and they invited him. I was seeing a lot of ads. I think they were trying to sell more packs, and then here's Sammy Sosa. All of a sudden, boom, a flood. Kind of funny.
Yep. Because there's a lot of people out there that, you know, uh, they're excited for Sammy and just have Sammy back with the Cubs.
Yeah,
So it's going to move the needle.
absolutely. Big time.
Um, I don't know if you saw, Brennan Davis has a new team.
Yeah, he signed with the Yankees, and I wish him all the luck. He's had so much bad luck in his career. Hopefully, he finds something.
Yeah, I was talking to my wife, over breakfast this morning, and I was saying that, you know, I had a lot of high hopes for him. Um, and just injuries sort of just derailed everything. But I root for him, and I hope he's able to turn things around and and he gets a clean shot and a fresh take in New York, and I hope it works out for him.
I do too. I do too. And he's not the only former big Cub prospect named to be sent away. He was non-tendered, but we traded away Matt Mervis today, so there's another one. And again, this to me goes back to my point of you don't want to drain your farm system. You don't want to empty the cupboard, but you can't hoard everybody because a lot of these guys either don't pan out or they don't pan out in their environment and they just find their way in other places because there's a better opportunity, they hear new voices, and the dynamics just change.
Yep. And I don't even know who the guy that we got for Mervis is.
He's a utility player. He's utility depth, nothing more.
Um, does that mean Miles Mastrobuoni's going to be gone?
I think so.
Um, yeah. So I agree with you that you got to make sure that if you're the Cubs, you know your farm system way better than anybody else knows your farm system, and that you should have a constantly reevaluating where you think players can be at some point, and then from there project that onto where do you see a log jam, and you've got to make sure that you're getting the most value for those players, whether that be staying on the team and being an eventual big league player, or um, you part ways with them and get the most value in return. This Matt Mervis trade, I think, was one where you kept him too long and the return was minimal.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's what you don't want to have happen. They
No,
either
not
need
at
to be
all.
contributing players on your big league roster, or getting returns.
Exactly. Yep.
Um, I don't think there's anything really happened with the White Sox.
They hired the one guy from the Angels. Uh,
Phil Nevin,
yeah, that's all I got on them.
and you'll never guess who reported that.
Bob
Old
Nightingale,
Bob Nightingale.
the stooge
Um,
of Jerry Reinsdorf.
Pretty much. The Blackhawks stink.
But they're
Um,
scoring at least.
I think we finally found a Bedard line.
Mm-hmm. He's already scored
Um,
tonight.
and Frank Nazar is showing the production isn't there, but you're seeing why they're excited about him and the chances of him becoming that second line center. Um, the offensive production hasn't been there, but he's been much better defensively than I thought he would be.
Yes.
Um, and Seth Jones is back, and I don't think that has been necessarily a good thing for the Blackhawks,
Yeah, I mean,
which
it's just
sucks
kind of the
because
one
he's
thing
here
you're
for
stuck with.
another.
Yeah.
You're stuck with him for another bajillion years.
Thanks, Stan Bowman.
Um, oh God, that was such a bad move by Bowman.
I didn't mind the trade. It was that extension. That extension was just
Right.
awful.
And it's going to be hanging over us. Like, we need a Dale Talon somewhere that we can dump him off onto.
Yeah,
I
really.
mean, the financials aren't bothering us right now, but eventually this contract is going to be a detriment to this team.
It's just so annoying.
But I don't know, this team offensively, you're seeing some better things, but they're just not a good team.
No,
And
and no.
some of the young defensemen, you're like, you get a little excited about them, and then suddenly you realize that they need more seasoning. So I believe Korchinski got sent back down and Wyatt Kaiser brought back up. Um, you know, uh, Eventually you've got to get guys to be ready and stick here, because we got a lot of talented players, and uh, they're they've got to realize that potential at some point.
Absolutely.
Um, and I don't think I don't think the interim head coach is the guy that's going to be the guy going forward.
No, I do at least think that Sorensen has helped get the offense a bit more stable. I'll give him that. But yeah, this isn't a situation where you say he's your long-term solution.
No, and I'm glad that they're learning that. I just wonder, are they going to hire? Is he going to be the interim guy for the rest of the season, or are they going to bring in a guy? I I I'm much. I would love to them bring in a permanent guy if you can. I mean, if there's somebody there
Well,
that's
someone's got to become
jobless.
available.
If there's a jobless guy, you've got to start your evaluation process now.
If there's a jobless guy, hey, LinkedIn.
Looking for work.
Hey, I know someone who's looking for work, another coach.
Yeah, that's not going to happen.
The hits principle. I'll bring it to hockey.
It'll be like Ted Lasso.
We'll call it puck.
Uh, but it's funny because this team is bad, and then you look and you're like, how are they still not the worst in the standings? San Jose is a real tire fire.
Yeah, yeah. Though Anaheim has taken some steps forward, but
I gotta
oh
look at
well.
Tank. I gotta look at Tankathon here. We'll see where we're at here. Tankathon, the Chicago sports fans' best friend.
I was gonna say the owner of
Uh,
Tankathon, lady, Chicago fans are putting my kids through college.
odds for number one. So it is San Jose, Chicago, Nashville, Buffalo, Detroit, Anaheim.
Boy, oh boy. Has Nashville been a disappointment or what?
Oh my God, they have been such a disappointment, and I love it.
There's disappointing where you're like around 500, and then there's disappointing where you're at the bottom of the standings.
Yeah, where you're 11, 18, and 7. That is not good.
No.
All right. I'm going to hit the sim lottery one time. Where do you think the Blackhawks wind up?
Second.
I'm going to guess third. Fourth. Do not
Two,
like.
three, four.
Do not like. I hit it again. Number one. Woo!
All right.
Uh, all right. So we wrap this up with a little Bulls talk.
I guess.
Um, the Bulls. I they've just been the same team that they've been. You're like, oh, got a 3-game winning streak here, and you got some nice wins against Toronto and Boston and Charlotte. You're 3 in a row. We could use this as a springboard. What happens? You followed up with a 3-game losing streak. Like,
Congrats on being the Bucks, I guess, the other night.
yeah, and Josh Giddey comes back from the foot injury and has a
Comes
triple
up
double.
clutch.
Yeah, it plays a great game, triple double. You're like, okay, but who knows what it's going to be like? Is there going to be any consistency? That's the problem. This team has some high highs, but then they have some low lows, and they're just a mediocre team. And a mediocre team is going to end up not in the playoffs, but not have a first round pick. That's where they're going to end up.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Purgatory, where we've been.
I mean, I hate to say it because being bad stinks, but for all of the bad teams we have, it's nice to at least have a mediocre team. But I think what they need to do is trade Vooch, trade Levine, tank it out the rest of the season, preserve your first round pick because it's protected, and then get rid of Billy Donovan. I don't think Billy's a bad coach. but I think we've hit our ceiling with Billy.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah, I think he's a fine coach, but you're not going to get anywhere meaningful.
Yeah. So, you look at where you are with the Bulls, and what is there? Their first round pick is a top 10 protected. So you've got to get bad enough where you keep that first round pick. And then you and then trade those two guys. I don't know what you'll get for Levine, but I think Vooch, you could get a first round pick.
They'll probably get 2 second rounders, knowing us.
But get bad enough, keep that first round pick, and because right now they're one spot away from losing that first round pick to San Antonio.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't lose your first round pick and not make the playoffs.
But the Bulls would find a way.
But if you can move Levine, you get cap relief, you move Vooch, you get cap relief, and you get a draft pick. You protect the that first round pick, and this is a top heavy draft. So you don't want those second round picks aren't going to be meaningful. Trying to move up here. And you move on from Billy and you do a rebuild. That's really what you got to do. There's no other way around it, to be honest with you.
Mm-hmm.
That's a sad way of thinking, but that's where they are.
That's where they've been for a long time.
Yeah, and eventually you've got to pull that trigger and do it. Garbage. Was there anything else you wanted to talk about?
Nope, I've said my piece.
Well, I think that's going to do it for this episode of Bill Swerski Sports. iTunes, Stitcher, YouTube, Google Play, Spotify, etc. Share this podcast with your friends. That would grow the show. Follow us on social media at Swerski Sports, Facebook.com/Swerski Sports, SwerskiSports.com, or ShyFanPat2 for Alex on Twitter /X, or AlexanderJPatCreative.com for all the cool stuff that Alex does. And again, thank you so much for listening. Until next time, bear down.
Cubs win! What a lucky break! The good Lord wants the Cubs to win!
We thank Ditka and God for all they have provided.
Cubs win! Cubs win! Cubs win!
Oh, I don't want her, you can have her, she's a Packer fan. She can't fit in my van.
And she looks like Remember, New Yorkers, smoking crack is not legal on planes.
Bears 31 to -7.
The Bears!
Oh, when the Bears go bearing down.